I'd like to bring Butte-Silver Bowl Council of Commissioners regular meeting for Wednesday, February 15th, 2023 to order. Clerk, can we please?
12 present, 0 absent.
12 present, 0 absent. Commissioner Sorge, could you please lead us in the prayer and the pledge?
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Fellow Commissioners, Almighty God, we implore you, look upon us and guide us this night as we make decisions which shall greatly affect our community of Butte-Silver Bow. Direct our thoughts, words, and deeds so that we please you and best serve our fellow citizens. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we'll move to the approval of the minutes for the February 1st, 2023 regular meeting. Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. At this time, I move to approve the minutes from the February 1st, 2023 regular meeting.
We have a motion and a second. Is there anything on the question? Vote. And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yea, 0 nay.
12 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Motion passes. I don't believe we have any items that are not addressed on tonight's agenda, so we'll move on to the Chief Executive's report. And as I stated a couple weeks ago, that today I'm going to do the state of the community and talk through all the things wonderful, I can't say all of the things, but wonderful things that went on in 2022. So the first thing that I would like to say, I'd like to just take a moment to say a prayer for Kathy Kennison. She had a pretty significant surgery yesterday, and so prayers to her for quick healing. So moving from there, I will start my state of the community. Commissioners and Butte-Silver Bow residents, 2022 was a busy and exciting year for Butte-Silver Bow. COVID brought many hardships to our community, but we rallied in a big way. The return of the Folk Festival, Honorary Raw, Lunch in the Park, and Music on Main signal the move in a positive direction. We just recently, just this afternoon, had a big announcement, and that's the moving or the purchase of the Acadia property by the Department of Corrections. And so with the purchase of this property, it solidifies CCCS's ability to continue to function in our community. And where they were at in the old buildings, their contract was in jeopardy of them not being able to extend that contract. So the Acadia facility is a facility that's built for this type of corrections, for pre-release. It has an exercise yard, it has 2 gymnasiums, it has a lot of the things that the current facility does not have. We started this journey a month into when I took over this job. I was visiting with Mike Thatcher about the possibility of going out to Acadia, and we went out and toured together. We were looking at what that price tag would be, and in truth, we were potentially considering Butte-Silver Bow purchasing that property to be able to lease it back to CCCS so that they could continue operations here in Butte. But as we move forward, the Department of Corrections came forward in their intent to buy that property with all intentions to move CCCS out to this facility. This is a great thing for our community. It's a great thing for Uptown Butte, the Uptown Master Plan for the development in the community. CCCS has been a great partner to our community. They have employed close to 300 people in Butte, Southwest Montana, and I myself was a previous employee of theirs, and Mike Thatcher is the reason I'm still in Butte. I was heading back to Kalispell on a teaching contract, and he hired me out at Rio and asked me to stay to become the PE and recreation director out there. And he's employed a lot of people and worked with us through a lot of hard times. So that's a huge announcement, and congratulations to CCCS. We do not have a final timeline on when this is going to happen, as A&E out of the state has to go through this and do the improvements that need to happen before CCS can move out there. But this is a great thing for our community as we move forward. So, moving on. Butte-Silver Bow's current unemployment rate is 2.2%, the lowest in history. This historic low rate has increased the demand for employees. The employee shortage is hitting every employment sector in our community, including Butte-Silver Bow, as we struggle to keep and retain employees, particularly in the jail and 911 dispatch. Community and business development in our community is continuing to grow. In 2022, the planning department permitted over $80 million in construction valuation. There's construction happening all over town, and we expect that trend to continue even with the increase in federal interest rates. Projects like Murdoch's, St. James Clinic, Nova Health Clinic, BW Blacksmith Burgers and Coffees, Copper Fox Subdivision, and the completion of the Stardom Park improvements are just a few of the many new or renovated buildings in town. Butte-Silver Bow has initiated a comprehensive zoning update, and a draft will be available in 2023. We are also updating our housing plan and working hard to address affordable housing needs of our community. The Tax Increment Finance District in the Montana Connections Park continues to have substantial development and has put over $59 million in infrastructure and land acquisition that includes water, sewer, gas, electric, fiber optic, railroad track, and roads into the Montana Connections Park. This investment into the Tifa district supports over 600 jobs, and with the National Guard Readiness Center under construction and the proposed development, the Montana Connections Park will continue to provide the community with more industrial job creation. We are also experiencing industrial growth in the South Butte Industrial Park area with the construction of a large warehouse business development on the Gaza McDermott Ranch that just recently broke ground. And I know Commissioner Fortune understands what's going on out there. Butte-Silver Bow is working closely with the Uptop development as the purchase has been finalized. 123, 125, and 135 West Park has been consolidated into one property. This will be a welcomed retail, warehouse, and residential development in Uptown Butte. Head Frames Distillery is expanding, and Butte-Silver Bow is working with John and Courtney McKee on the agreement to purchase Kelly Warehouse facility from Butte-Silver Bow. The M&M Bar and Cafe opened over Super Bowl weekend in their new location next door to the original M&M, and soon will be serving food. We'll be working with Selena Pankovich on how that property, on the burned out property, will be developed in the future. The old Extradance building is continuing renovation. There continues to be a lot of interest in our historic uptown buildings. Butte-Silver Bow has been working actively with the community on a Resilient Butte Committee, which was formed with the ever-changing climate and figuring out what the role of local government is going to be. Butte-Silver Bow, along with NCAT, hosted a climate adaptation workshop in Montana Tech in 2022. Butte-Silver Bow has also received over $15 million in ARPA dollars in direct allocation that was directed to go into water, stormwater, and wastewater projects. Using $8.1 million of the direct allocation, we were able to secure additional funding sources to include competitive and minimum allocation ARPA grants to fund $23.8 million in projects to improve infrastructure needs for Butte-Silver Bow, water, wastewater, and stormwater projects. These projects These projects are for improvements on Basin Creek and Molten Dams, new filters of Molten Reservoir Water Treatment Plant, West Side Stormwater Drain improvements, Metro Effluent, and a new press for solid waste. The Butte-Silver Bow Chief Executive's Office and Finance and Budget and Public Works Department will work with the Rocker community on the dissolution of Rocker Water and Sewer District, and we were able to bring this district onto the Butte-Silver Bow Water and Sewer with this funding. All these grants were secured because Butte-Silver Bow had an updated water and sewer master plan, which allowed for Butte-Silver Bow to be competitive and fund these projects at close to a 2-to-1 match of our direct ARPA allocation grant that were awarded to us. It was the work of multiple departments, including Budget and Finance, Public Works, Community Development, and Chief Executive's Office, to cement the grants for the applications during this time. Without these grants, local taxpayers would be asked to fund these much-needed projects, and it would take years of staggered projects with the possibility of infrastructure failure waiting for these projects to be funded. Butte-Silver Bowl was awarded an Economic Development EDA grant for Silver Lake Water System. This grant is critically important to upgrading the aging infrastructure at Silver Lake and the Ramsey Pump Station. This system is an industrial lifeblood for Montana Resources, REC, and Montana Connections Industrial Park. These upgrades will allow Butte-Silver Bowl to utilize this resource efficiently and effectively based on the needs of the industrial sector. This grant supports the construction of 4 key components to the Silver Lake water system that provides water for mining and other industrial purposes in Butte-Silver Bowl. The total cost of this project will be $4.4 million and will have no impact to local taxpayers. Butte-Silver Bowl Public Works Department is working closely with the Finance and Budget Office and Chief Executive's Office and was awarded a federal Land Access Program grant for $7.9 million for road improvements on Roosevelt Drive as well. The consent decree has been a focal point to this administration since coming into office. The pandemic slowed the process of getting the cleanup started in the corridor. I have made it a priority to get the parties back in a room and off online meetings with project principals to get the cleanup moving. Our Department of Reclamation and Environmental Services has been engaged and actively working with all agencies to move the projects along. The Para-Tailings project is nearing completion, and the Civic Center road and site conditions should be completed by the end of the summer. Work on the Montana Pole Plant, in which we're going to have a presentation today, is also near completion, and we're working closely with DEQ as to when to decide Butte-Silver Bowl should accept this site. There are a few things that we need to iron out, such as our floodplain, before we accept the property. Protecting our potable water is a major focus of my administration. Basin Creek Reservoir and the forest surrounding our most valuable water source for the community is at a critical stage. Butte-Silver Bowl has engaged with Senator Tester's office to bring attention to this emergency at our reservoir. An emergency declaration resolution was passed last month. Butte-Silver Bowl received 2 DNRC grants to deal with fire mitigation and forest thinning on BSB property, and we will continue to work with local Forest Service offices to work with fire mitigation plan for the national forest surrounding the reservoir. We also have created a community wildland preparedness plan. Montana Tech and Chancellor Cook are engaged with Butte-Silver Bowl along with much of the university's leadership team. Butte-Silver Bowl engages and supports the university's efforts in expanding their presence in research and development and projects around the campus. Economic development is a focus of this administration. We have a team made up of local leaders that meet bi-weekly to talk about projects and potential businesses and residential development in our community. My administration has spearheaded the fight against another epidemic, fentanyl. A community action team has been formed. With the help of Town Pump, we've raised awareness and prevention through our KeepButteSafe.com ad campaign. Our local enforcement, along with state and federal agencies, made a significant bust on the drugs being trafficked in and out of Butte. This drug bust confiscated drugs, weapons, and cash. This will lead to convictions of dealers and traffickers with local ties connected to the Sinaloa cartel out of Mexico. The Chief Executive's Office and the Finance and Budget Office created a community grant program that allowed up to $1 million of local government's direct allocation to create a subrecipient grant program. $662,000 were awarded to subrecipients that qualified under this local program. We also awarded another $1 million of Highlands College to be used to create or expand workforce development programs. This administration is very proud of the work that was put into these subrecipient grants. All the awarded grants were graded and scored based on criteria by the Chief Executive's appointed ARPA committee. This subrecipient program was unique to Butte-Silver Bowl. I don't know of any other community that had a program similar to this other than Bozeman that worked with the Bozeman College that awarded some of their money through their county. Our year ended on many high notes. The copper star that once adorned the 2017 White House Christmas tree has been moved to the forever home above the rotating door in the front of the courthouse. The Christmas stroll was a huge success, had entertainment and a light parade in Uptown Butte. Finally, the production of 1923's first season wrapped up filming in our community and has been released on Paramount. The production will return to film again for season 2, bringing with them more economic opportunities for the people and businesses of Butte-Silver Bowl. Butte America and our community go on thriving because of the hard-working, caring, and dedicated people who live and work here. The Butte-Silver Clerk and Recorder's Office, working together with the Civic Center staff, were able to successfully move the election to the mall. This was a huge undertaking for these two departments, but they made the transition look easier than it actually was, and the community seemed to like the location. It's almost impossible to cover all the achievements that we've had over the last year and condense it into a State of the Community address. I'm extremely proud of all the departments and the hard work that is done every day. I get to hear the good and the bad on pretty much everything that goes on in our community. I can honestly say that the employees of Butte-Silver Bow are working every single day to make Butte a better place. So now what? What are the goals that we have for 2023? We're going to be working with all of our departments to actively address the dangerous buildings concerns in the community. The demolition application committee will go into effect in the next few weeks. We will continue with each of the departments to address the concerns of the community. We want to regulate licenses available for the marijuana dispensaries. We're not going to take any licenses away from anybody that has a dispensary currently, but I'm going to bring to this body a proposal to limit the licenses as they move forward, to limit how many dispensaries we have. So if one goes out of business, we don't issue another permit, so that we get to a number that is reasonable within our community. It is a goal to work with the sheriff and city court to try to stand a community service program that will allow judges to sentence offenders to community service program. The details are not yet available, but we will be looking to use local marijuana tax dollars to fund this program. Getting a haul rod identified for moving waste out of the corridor project and move projects forward is also a priority. Lexington Wetlands and Grove Gulch will be moving forward this summer, and hopefully we'll see some major progress in those two areas over this summer and construction season. We want to complete the non-union pay matrix structure and get that in front of you to know this pay structure is important for Butte-Silver Bow, so that as we're competing out there, that our employees know that they're being fairly compensated and competitively against all of the other communities and or businesses within our community. We want to get all of those grant-funded projects that I kind of talked about, and there's many more grants in the health department and other places underway. So we want to get those done as soon as possible, based on the workforce that's out there and what we can get done. We want to update a Butte-Silver Bow community-wide strategic plan in 2023. We'll continue to seek grant opportunities to expand infrastructure as we expect to see continued growth in our community. We're monitoring the 2023 legislative session, supporting bills that benefit Butte-Silver Bow and speaking against bills that will negatively impact our community. We want to continue to expand and to diversify our tax base. This administration will hold the line on service fees and tax increases whenever possible. Atlantic Richfield and Butte-Silver Bow will continue to engage in conversations on the transfer of property that is owned by Atlantic Richfield, and they would like Butte-Silver Bow to take ownership on. Carving out some of these properties could be beneficial for the development and help addressing our affordable housing needs. I promise that we will continue to work hard to make sure we will continue to make Butte America the best place to live, work, and thrive. And as I close tonight, Director Gleason wanted me to let everyone know that the mid-year reports will be handed out next week, next Wednesday, at the Committee of the Whole meeting. So with that, I will close the Chief Executive's report, and we'll move on. So thank you for your attention to my reading my own writing skills here. So, all right. So moving on. We'll move on to any public comment on any item on the agenda tonight. If you'd like to speak about any item on the agenda, please step forward, state your name, address, and the item number that you'll be speaking on. Seeing none, we'll move on to Section 1, bid openings, public hearings, and or presentations. We have 3 bid openings tonight. And so first, County Attorney, I'll read this section first on communication number 2023-69. Jim Keenan, Butte-Silver Bowl Water Treatment Superintendent, requested council commissioners approval for the bid opening on February 15th, 2023 for supplying inline self-cleaning filters in the Tiffit Pump Station to strain out debris from Silver Lake Water System water that serves the area. So County Attorney Joyce, do we have proof of publication for all of these bid openings?
Mr. Chief Executive, we do have a proof of publication for all 3 bid openings, and all appear to be in order.
Thank you. So Director Neary.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher, Commissioners. Looks like we have 3 bidders on the filter system. The first one is from Bowl Filter Protection Systems out of Novi, Michigan. That isn't the letter. No. Chief Executive Gallagher, there was a letter in here that stated that they didn't have time to get a bid bond, so.
We can't
the bid
accept their
bond
bid?
isn't- no.
Okay. Thank you.
I would have searched for a long time if you didn't tell me that's what it said. The second one is from H.D. Fowler Company. I do not know, oh, Belgrade.
Belgrade.
Mr. Chief Executive, there is a bid bond in the amount of 10% from a licensed surety company that appears to be in order.
Thank you, County Attorney Joyce.
Chief Executive Gallagher, the total on this is $108,081.25. 108,8125.
That's $108,000, $81.25.
The third one is from Normon Equipment in Great Falls, Montana.
And Mr. Chief Executive, there is a bid bond in the amount of 10% from a licensed surety company that appears to be in order.
Thank you, County Attorney Joyce.
Chief Executive Gallagher, the total on this is $286,750. $286,750.
$286,750. And that's the last of our 3, is that correct?
Wait a minute, hold on. This is for the truck.
Oh. Whew. There was quite a discrepancy between prices there, thank you.
Do you have a third one for the? Okay. So the self-cleaning filter one is done with just the 2 bids.
With the 2 bids and one did not have a bid bond. Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha. All right. So this last one should go on the,
This will be on the truck
okay.
one.
All right. So we'll move on to, so we'll refer those back to, so Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. At this time, I'll make a motion to refer these back to the Public Works Department for a report back to this body.
We have a motion and a second to refer back to the Public Works Department. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
Twelve yea, 0 nay.
12 yeas, 0 nay. Motion passes. Moving on to communication number 2023-71. Mark Neri, Public Works Director, requesting council commissioners schedule a bid opening for February 15, 2023 for doors and openers for the shop buildings roads divisions. Director Neri.
Gallagher, looks like we have 3 bids on this one,
Are we sure?
I hope. Yeah. So the first one is from Ren's Overhead in Butte. Right on top.
Mr. Chief Executive, there is a bid bond in the amount of 10% from a licensed surety company that appears to be in order.
Thank you, County Attorney Joyce.
Chief Executive Gallagher, the total on this is $156,856. $156,856.
$156,856. Thank you.
The second one is from Door Systems of Montana out of Helena.
Mr. Chief Executive, there is a cashier's check as bid security in the amount of 10%.
Thank you, County Attorney Joyce.
Chief Executive Gallagher, the total on this is $78,673. $78,673.
$78,673. Thank you.
And the third one is from Alpha Overhead Door in Butte.
Mr. Chief Executive, there is a bid bond in the amount of 10% from a licensed surety company that appears to be in order.
Thank you, County Attorney Joyce.
Chief Executive Gallagher, the total on this is $128,160.84. $128,160.84.
$128,000, 128,160.84 cents.
Yes.
Correct? Thank you. Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I move to refer these to the Public Works Department for a report back to this body.
We have a motion and a second to refer back to the Public Works Department. Is there anything on question? Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yea, 0 nay.
12 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to communication number 2023-72, Mark Neri, Public Works Director, requesting council commissioners schedule a bid opening for February 15, 2023 for a camera truck for the Metro Maintenance Division. Director Neri.
Thank So, Chief Executive Gallagher, we have 3 bids on the truck. The first one was from Aries Industries out of Waukesha, Wisconsin.
Okay.
Why can't people follow instructions? Is this the one where they sent a letter before? A letter of credit? I think they reached out to you and Angie about it before. Yeah. I think that's it. It doesn't or does?
I know, I should. Our friends from DEQ are gonna wish I put them first.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure we didn't open it the first time because we couldn't find it, but they had asked about this. And
Mr. Chief Executive, there is not bid security provided. There's a letter indicating that they have a line of credit, but it doesn't indicate what their line of credit is. So there's no way to know whether or not it's 10% of their bid.
Thank you, County Attorney Joyce. So with that, we will dismiss this bid.
the second bid is from EnviroClean Equipment out of Gresham, Oregon. Batting 1,000 tonight.
Mr. Chief Executive, there is a bid bond in the amount of 10% from a licensed surety company that appears to be in order.
Thank you, County Attorney Joyce.
Chief Executive Gallagher, the total on this is $241,797. $241,797.
That's $241,797.
Gotta go through this again. This is the same one. I already opened it, yeah. Yeah. But this is on, it was on the, for the filters.
Mr. Chief Executive, there is a bid bond in the amount of 10% from a licensed surety company that appears to be in order.
Thank you, County Attorney Joyce. I think I know this price.
And this one is from Normand from Great Falls.
This is from Great Falls.
Yeah, Normand
Normal.
Equipment in Great Falls. And the total on this one is $286,750.
Okay.
$286,750.
$286,750 is the bid on that. Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I move to refer these to the Public Works Department, these bids to the Public Works Department for a report back to this body.
We have a motion and a second. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please? Commissioner Anderson. Director Neary, could we get an engineering estimate on the last one, on the pump truck?
$260,000.
260,000 was the engineer's estimate on that, for the record. Okay. Is there anything else on the question? Commissioners have voted. Please record the vote.
Twelve yea, 0 nay.
12 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. We look forward to having those come back to us. Next, we'll move on to a presentation tonight. We have communication number 2023-59, Amy Steinmetz, Waste Management and Remediation Division Administrator, requesting council commissioners for time on the agenda for DEQ Project Manager David Bowers to discuss next steps at the Montana Pole and Treatment Plant Superfund site and answer questions that commissioners may have. Mr. Bowers, welcome.
Chief Executive Gallagher and Commissioners, thank you very much for having us this evening. It's with great pleasure that I'm standing here today with a milestone to go over with you. What I'd like to do is go over basically to bring closure to the 2022 construction season at Montana Pole, and then also to provide a window into a few of the next steps into the immediate future, preparing for the next and final phase of the cleanup at Montana Pole. So basically, I'd like to start off with a summary, go over the cost, a few loose ends that we need to take care of at Montana Pole to tie up the south side and bring that to closure. A small amount of low-level contamination that needs to be taken care of, and revegetation that still needs to be taken care of. As you can see from the slide, Envirocon wrapped up their construction in 2022 September, and the original bid was for $5.7 million, and the final cost came in at $6.5 million. The additional costs were less than 15%, which I find acceptable generally with large contracts like this, especially with remediation and unknowns like finding new waste and so forth. You're looking at anywhere between 15 and 25%. So being able to come in just under 15%, I feel is more than reasonable. Quite a bit of the additional cost was to remove more waste that we discovered upon removing the stockpile of clean material, and also in other areas that we weren't anticipating as much as we had ended up having to remove. We also, because we removed more material, we also had to import more material for the fill. So that kind of goes hand in hand. We also had to add a few additional contract days, 9 contract days, so that we could get those additional pieces of work completed. And then finally, we provided a fuel adjustment for Envirocon with the fuel costs that rose from construction season 2021 to 2022. So that basically covers about 90%, 95% of that additional cost that was there. So I mentioned that we have a little bit of low-level contamination that's left over. If you look at the diagram here, you'll see the dark purple that outlines the land treatment unit to the east. That area is what we refer to as the berms, berm areas. And we ended up doing 2 removals, got down to sampling once again, and we still ended up with a little bit of contamination left on site in those areas. When I say low level, that means we're just above the 30 parts per trillion cleanup level, but we're still under the 100 parts per trillion, which would be the recreational level. And what we're doing there is we're prepared. There's a couple of options that we have. We can do the additional removal in the future, or we can leave it in place if the area is planned for recreational use. Regardless, we'll be working with Butte-Silver, and Butte-Silver will make that final determination with the assistance of DEQ and EPA. So that's the plan for that moving ahead. The other thing I'd like to call out on this before we move on as far as the figure is the area in green, both to the west of the CAMU and to the east of the CAMU are utility corridors. The one to the west is the Northwestern Energy natural gas line supply line. And then to the east, we have a number of different utilities running through there that are Butte-Silver bows. And we also have a utility for us that's feeding our clean water to the water treatment plant. And then the other areas are the areas where we will manage into the future as well, dealing with the CAMU and an area just to the west of the natural gas line where we could not remove all of the waste because of the natural gas line. We couldn't get as close as we would have liked to, and we wouldn't have wanted to get as close as we would have liked to, just for the risks that would have been involved inherently with having to deal with the natural gas supply line. In October, we developed a bid package, and we let that bid out at the end of October. We secured KC Harvey Environmental out of Bozeman to do the reseeding. And once Harvey was hired on, the contract was put in place. We also worked closely with Dr. Robert Powell at Montana Tech to identify the seed mix to be used on site. 2 different seed mixes being used, one for the CAMU area and then another seed mix for the rest of the area. We also had Jordan Contracting, as you can see in the picture, prepared the land treatment unit surface for seeding. Because this was an area that was prepared for a liner, it went under engineering compaction specifications and was quite compacted. So one of the first things we needed to do was to get out there and rip that. And at this point in time, I'd also like to recognize Jordan Contracting for coming forward and really helping us out in the bid. KC Harvey would have subcontracted that piece out. And in the bid package that was contracted or bid out, the subcontractor bid out for $50,000. And Jordan Contracting we contacted them to kind of shop around because it was a subcontractor. and Casey Harvey was the only bidder on the project, we felt that we could see if we couldn't find a better solution for this. And Jordan did it for a time and materials of no more than $8,000, and they completed it for $4,000. So a significant savings to the project. Harvey also mobilized then on site the first week of November. We know what happened in the first week of November. Winter arrived and never left, and so here we are, we're waiting for spring to get out there and begin the seeding as soon as we see the opportunity. Next steps for the south side, the highest priorities go hand in hand. The first thing that we need to get done is a construction completion report that we're currently working on with the consultant Tetra Tech. And once that is done, it will go to EPA for review and approval. And then once that's done, we will hand it over to Butte-Silver because the construction completion report is critical for assisting them in making a decision on whether or not they would like to move forward with the parcels that will be available to them. Also, the other thing that needs to be done is the south side. Well, the entire site is a mosaic of different deeds. We have Burlington Northern, we have Atlantic Richfield, we have the original OIS deed to the original pole plant. So it's a patchwork of deeds out there, and we need to hire a title company, work through that, get the survey of the perimeter of the south side, and then also work on surveying the interior pieces so that we have the deeds that are necessary for transfer in the future. So what is that going to look like? Before you is a schematic basically of potentially of what the final deeds will look like. The first thing we need to do is establish the perimeter, like I said, and then what you see in the purple and the yellow will be retained by the Department of Environmental Quality for operation and maintenance into the future. And then once the deeds for each of the parcel are finalized, it will be up to Butte-Silver for when they want to accept the ownership and move forward, when and if. One of the things that I'd like to point out that's been, I know has been discussed in the community and is part of the future plans is the trail that is to go from Silver Bow to Copper Mountain. If you look between, in the figure where to the far east there is the stormwater channel, and then then there's a patch of ground in between that and the service road that runs north and south that's just to the east of the Camus. That area in there has been prepared and is more than what would be necessary to accommodate a trail going through there. So for the south side, we've established where that can go, and that would hook up nicely with the railroad, the abandoned railroad bed that's to the south and just west of the cemetery. Also, other key considerations that we need to look at is the past and current FEMA floodplain. This particular figure shows the pre-construction 100-year floodplain in red, and then the new 100-year floodplain based on construction in the purple, blue color that's in there. The reason that moved to the north and into the land treatment unit area is because the berm that was on the south side that ran along Greenwood Boulevard was reduced so that it could not retain and direct the 100-year flood like it had done before. I don't have in my presentation, but if you go to the very last page of your packet, you will see what the 100-year floodplain did look like pre-construction, and you can see what the berm did as far as how it directed what would be a 100-year flood to the west and into the channeled area on Montana Pole. I might add that in the time that this is, Montana Pole has been under the direction of DEQ and EPA, the operator out there at the water treatment plant hasn't seen anything close to anything that would be considered even like a 20-year flood. What's most common in this country, and I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir, everybody knows this, is the significant thunder cell that comes overhead. You get a 24-hour event maximum, whatever, a kind of a gully washer, and then it's over, it subsides. But the consecutive days of rain that would be necessary to create a 100-year flood hasn't seen this country in some time. So next steps for DEQ EPA. I mentioned the last phase, the final phase of cleanup is to address the discrete contamination in the groundwater, where most of it is underneath the interstate between the south and the north, as you can see in the diagram. And presently, what we're doing is we're working with EPA. We've got a number of things that we need to do. First, we need to go through the record of decision and examine the requirements in there to address the discrete groundwater contamination. I believe it's spelled out pretty clearly, but we need to have concurrence from EPA and DEQ legal as well on that. We also need to identify the stakeholders for the next phase of work. It's going to be a little bit different. Obviously, the one that's going to be there front and center again is going to be Butte-Silver. And then we'll also be identifying the legal and public outreach components that we're going to need before we start moving forward. And we're also going to be looking at key critical path components. Obviously, one of those, like I said, is working with Butte-Silver. We're going to need to work very closely with MDT, Montana Department of Transportation, to coordinate with whatever that we're going to try to do under the interstate. We'll do a feasibility study, a limited feasibility study to look at the techniques and the type of reagent we want to deliver to this contamination. And we would like to bring MDT in right up front so that they're understanding every step of the way what we're thinking, so that we don't get to the end of the line and then have them going, oh no, you can't do that, you should have come to us before. And so I think it's very important that we bring them along. And then finally, the Butte Priority Soils Corridor Project coordination is very important to us as well. And we work closely with the Butte Priority Soils team from DEQ and EPA, and also Atlantic Richfield. And then both of those entities and their consultants are working with our consultants as well, and we're sharing information so that we can prepare for BRW, the Butte Reduction Works work in the corridor. Whoops. And with that, just wrap up what our outreach is for post-construction. Back in November on the 17th, we had a beautiful Butte day where we hosted the chief executive and Eric Hassler out on site for the post-construction walkthrough, and to show them basically what we had there and what we were thinking. And then tonight, my presentation to you folks. And then finally, on the 28th of February, we'll be also hosting a presentation for the Williamsburg and Boulevard neighborhood folks. And then in the future, also presenting to CTEC and presenting during the EPA community discussion, which I understand the next one is coming up sometime either in late spring or early summer. And then we also are putting out a newsletter that will go out tomorrow that will be sent to the neighbors and the interested parties that are on the mailing list. And that wraps up the presentation. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have regarding the cleanup or what we're doing in the future.
Thanks, Mr. Bowers. I want to recognize Moira Davin and Carolina Blue and from DEQ, and then also Allie Archer from EPA who's with you tonight as well, and thank you for coming. I like the one comment in here in your presentation. Winter came in the story because on the 11-17 tour, it was winter, and so we felt it that day. But any questions of commissioners for Mr. Bowers? Commissioner Sorge.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. Thank you, Mr. Bowers, for the presentation and for the update. My question is, in the event Butte-Silver Bowl opts to do more soil removal, what would be the consequences, or what would be the pros and cons of taking more soil out?
Commissioner Sorge, Mr. Bauer.
Yes, Commissioner Sorge, Chief Executive. Could you clarify what the consequence you're speaking
Well,
to?
I guess I'm just wondering, because you're talking about if there are additional removals to meet the 30 part per trillion target. So if they, what would happen? if they opt-
What we would do is potentially in the next phase, move it over to the north side. There will be other soil removals over there that we will need to manage, and the concentrations in there would be such that we would be very comfortable with those even being surface soils over there, right? Because that water treatment plant's going to be there for a while, and the surface soils for a construction worker, if they were subsurface, is 400 parts per trillion, which is even higher. And then if they were on the surface, as far as a recreational, even running through the trail through that area, those would be acceptable concentrations for the trail coming through. So we could move it off of that site so it could meet the commercial industrial target. And like I said, we'll be working closely with Butte-Silver Bow, and that's one of the options, and we'll work it out and make it work for Butte-Silver Bow.
Thank you, Mr. Bowers.
Thank you, Mr. Bowers.
Any, question, Commissioner Mankins.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. Thank you, Dave, for the great presentation and the update. Feeding off of Commissioner Sorge, I mean, I wrote in here when we were talking about the berms and the 30 parts per trillion and the 100 parts per trillion, and it's just kind of what I said. Why not just clean it all? We don't know if we're going to accept this or not, Butte-Silver Bow. We don't know what we're going to do with it moving forward. I don't know if we're there. Why are we not just taking care of it and making sure that it's 0 parts per trillion?
That wasn't our cleanup. Our cleanup was to 30 parts, and so throughout the south side, everything out there is less than 30, all the way down to 0. That was our target, and that's what we cleaned up to. And then as far as the berms surrounding the land treatment unit, like I said, we can move that if that's the wishes of Butte-Silver Bow, or if there's going to be a service road there or something like that, then that would be an acceptable first prep as far as a road bed or something that would go around there. It just depends on what Butte-Silver Bow wants to do, and we're going to be more than happy to accommodate.
Thank you, Mr. Bowers.
Excuse me.
Follow up, Commissioner.
So, Chief Executive, so do we know what we're doing?
Commissioner
accepting
Mankins,
this?
we do not, and we have conditions that I think I'd even defer a little bit to Eric Hassler, Director of Department of Reclamation Services, that we need answered before we'd accept this property. Part of it, as I mentioned in the Chief Executive's State of the Community, we don't know what that end land use would be, and floodplain's a big deal for us to accept it. I think that there are some acceptable levels that Director Hassler and I have talked about dealing with the berms based on, some of the things that could be there. And if those berms were left in place, the levels could be acceptable, but we have not fully engaged that conversation yet.
Yep. And if I might add, part of that will be predicated upon the construction completion report and Butte-Silver Bow's ability to review that and endorse what the findings are in there.
Yeah.
So,
Follow-up,
one
Commissioner
last
Mankins.
question, just when you have the meeting for the neighborhood for the Boulevard in the Williamsburg, it's 2:28, but it doesn't say where in the time where you're going to be meeting.
That will be in the newsletter that we're sending out, but it'll be at the Fire Training Center like it usually is. And then I believe it's 6:30 PM on the 28th.
Thank you, Mr. Bowers.
Thank you.
Any other, Commissioner Anderson?
Thank you very much, Chief Executive. Thank you very much, Mr. Bowers, for being here tonight.
I don't think your microphone's on.
Make sure,
There you go.
yes, on. Thank you. Again, thank you, Chief Executive and Mr. Bowers, for being here tonight and the presentation. One of the things that just, between the last few questions running through my mind, if we did move these soils, you were talking about leaving them as surface, how would that affect with the floodplain? And you were talking about how most of the flooding that we do see is from those massive thunderstorms and cells that come through here every so often. If this was surface, how would that impact the groundwater and the stream and other areas that we have cleaned up around this? What would be done to prevent this from integrating into those areas?
Commissioner Anderson, Mr. Bowers?
Commissioner Anderson, Chief Executive, that's an excellent question. And the soils would be placed on the north side. And as you can see, the north side is completely outside the floodplain, north of the interstate. And so as far as a 100-year flood, we wouldn't have any concerns from that perspective. And then the stormwater we manage right now, and the post-construction was designed in the same way, that all rain that falls on the surface of Montana Pole must be retained on the surface of Montana Pole. And so we have various features that have been designed on the south side as far as retention ponds and so forth, that where the stormwater is channeled to those so that it cannot leave the site. Exactly, and so, and the same thing on the north side. So anything that hits on that side, it's designed to be retained there. So that's how it would be handled.
Thank you, Mr.
Protect the
Bowers.
floodplain.
I think that Eric Hassler, our director, would like to add a little bit to support some of the information that is needed.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive, members of council. For the record, I am Eric Hassler. I'm the director of the Department of Reclamation for Butte-Silver Bow. And Commissioner Anderson, in that regards, that's a parcel that is not up for Butte-Silver Bow to make a decision on taking ownership. That would remain underneath the ownership of the state of Montana in perpetuity, or until the water treatment is no longer unnecessary, and a decision would need to be made at that point in time. I also wanted to just touch a little bit on the floodplain aspect, how you saw that floodplain grow. That is a direct result and request from Butte-Silver Bow in working with DEQ. Underneath our ordinances, we cannot own a property that utilizes dikes or berms for flood control. So it was a non-starter, regardless of how effective cleanup was, for us to ever obtain that property or acquire that property, if you will, if those berms remained in place along Greenwood Avenue. So by our request, it caused that floodplain to grow. So I just wanted to clarify that for the group. And if there's any further questions, I can help answer, and David will be here as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Director Hassler. That clarified, and I know that we've talked about that at times, but it refreshed my memory on that, so thank you. Any other questions of commissioners? Seeing none, I appreciate you and the group coming down, and I hope you enjoyed your meal at Metals Bank. I know they always serve a great meal, and have safe travels back to Helena.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Always enjoy my visit.
Thanks. Okay. Moving on. We'll move on to Section 2, consent agenda. We have Section A, 1 through 4, and Section B, 1 through 29. Do we have any friendly amendments and/or segregations? Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I'd like to segregate 9, communication number 2023-83.
That's communication number 2023-83. Are there any other segregations? Seeing none, Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I move to approve Section 2 of the consent agenda, A, 1 through 4, and B, 1 through 29, with the exception of number 9, communication number 2023-83.
We have a motion and a second to accept tonight's consent agenda, or to approve tonight's consent agenda. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yea, 0 nay.
12 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving back to communication number 2023-82. Oh, I'm sorry, 83. That would be 2023-83. Chris and Rosa, TIFID Administrator, requesting Council of Commissioners approval for a bid opening for March 1st, 2023 for a bid relocating a dirt pile in the Montana Connections Park to Solvay property. Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I spoke with Administrator Rosa earlier today, and we're going to need to push this bid opening to March 8th due to some requirements with getting it published in the newspaper. So at this time, I'd move to change the date to communication number 2023 for the bid opening to be March 8th, 2023, and to hold in abeyance.
We have a motion and a second to hold this in abeyance and change the date from March 1st to March 8th. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yea, 0 nay.
12 yea, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to Section 3, ordinances and resolutions for final reading. Tonight we have, it looks like 4 resolutions. We'll start with resolution number 2023-03. Clerk, please read the caption.
A resolution declaring the intention of Commissioners of the City and County of Butte-Silver, Montana, to create a special lighting district to be known as Special Improvement Lighting District Number 1030 for the purpose of directing, equipping, maintaining, and installing an electrical lighting system, designating and describing the boundaries of said proposed Special Improvement Lighting District, stating the purpose of and general character of the improvements to be made in said Special Improvement District, estimating the approximate cost thereof for the first year, finding, determining, and declaring that property within said Special Improvement District will be especially benefited and affected by such proposed improvement, declaring that such property should be assessed for the cost thereof of maintenance and energy, and extending such assessments to be in annual installments, and providing for the funds upon which said special improvement, energy, and maintenance funds shall be drawn, providing for the publication and giving the notice of the passage and adoption of this resolution, and providing for an effective date herein.
Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I move to place resolution number 2023-03 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
We have a motion and a second to place on final reading. Is there anything on the question? Please vote. Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yea, 0 nay.
12 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. I think on the next one, we have a little bit of a error on here because we have these listed with the numbering order. We have one and then one again on this for the section 3. So this, I believe, should be number 2, resolution number 2023-04. Clerk, can you please read the caption?
A resolution amending the budget during the fiscal year after conducting a public hearing at a regular scheduled meeting of the Council of Commissioners in accordance with Section 4006 MCA, appropriating unanticipated revenue to the city, county of Butte-Silver Bow from the Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services to be used within the Health Department Hepatitis C prevention activities and providing for an effective date herein.
Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I move to place resolution number 2023-04 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
We have a motion and a second to place resolution number 2023-04 on final reading. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yea, 0 nay.
12 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. I just might need clarification. Do we need to do a friendly amendment at all, or not a friendly amendment, to the numbering? County? No. I just wanted to make sure that we didn't need to do anything formally to change the numbering on this in that section. Okay, so we'll move on to the item number 3, resolution number 2023-05. Clerk, please read the caption.
A resolution amending the budget during the fiscal year after conducting a public hearing at a regularly scheduled meeting of the Council of Commissioners in accordance with Section 7-6-4006 MCA, appropriating unanticipated revenue to the city, county of Butte-Silver Bow from the Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services to be used within the Health Department for development of a 3-year strategic plan and providing for an effective date herein.
Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I move to place resolution number 2023-05 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
There's a motion resolution number 2023-05 on final reading. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? There we go. And would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yea, 0 nay.
12 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to item 4, Council Bill number 2023-1 and ordinance number 2023-1. Clerk, please read the caption.
An ordinance amending Chapter 12.04 of the Butte-Silver Bow Municipal Code, B-SBMC, entitled Construction Within Public Right-of-Ways, and specifically amending Section 12.04.290 entitled Violation Penalty, and providing for an effective date herein.
Commissioner Frederickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. I move to place Council Bill number 2023-01, ordinance number 2023-01 on final reading and passed, having been deemed fully read at length.
We have a motion and a second to place 2023-1 and ordinance number 2023-1 on final reading. Is there anything on the question? Could commissioners please vote? Would anyone like to change their vote? Clerk, please record the vote.
12 yea, 0 nay.
12 yeas, 0 nay, motion passes. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is the calendar of other meeting and events. Please note all the dates and times of that. And next, we will move on to any public comment on any item not on the agenda tonight. Please step forward, state your name, address, and what you'll be speaking to us on. Seeing none, yes, Commissioner Thatcher.
Thank you, Chief Executive Gallagher. I think I should have asked this question. I guess it didn't really dawn on me, but can we hold bid openings at committee of the whole meetings? Yes, okay. Something I asked, something I did not know. I just have never seen it done.
Commissioner Thatcher, thank you for that question because I wasn't sure either. That's why we have a county attorney sitting right there. All right. All right. So seeing that we don't have any public comment, I would take a motion to adjourn. We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Is there all in favor? Signal by aye. Aye. Opposed? The meeting is adjourned.